Hello and welcome to episode number 27 of Gowing Life's Longevity Weekly. This is a show where I bring you all the news and updates from the world of health, wellness and longevity. I'm your host Chris Kerwin, and today we're going to be talking about gene therapy's coming of age, our chat with Dr. Rachel Menzies about death anxiety, and also the health benefits of using a sauna. But before we get stuck into that, here are the headlines from this week. The results of Chromodex's clinical trial in patients with ataxia-telangiectasia found that the NAD precursor and heralded longevity supplement, nicotinamide riboside, or NR, improved ataxia scores in patients and increased serum immunoglobulin G, or antibodies, which are important for protection against pathogens. The Buck Institute for Research on Aging and the Astera Institute this week announced a comprehensive $70 million multi-omics study of the biological effects of longevity interventions, i.e. the Rejuvenome Project. Through a series of large-scale lifespan studies in genetically diverse mice, researchers will test interventions, both alone and in combination, known or suspected to impede or reverse aging and extend longevity. Now firstly, let's talk about gene therapy. Gene therapy was something that, until a very short time ago, had only been experienced by a handful of people in the world, and that would cost a huge amount of money to produce just a single dose. In the last year or so, this has completely changed. Now, a huge proportion of the world's population has been subject to gene therapy, in the form of mRNA or adeno-associated virus-based COVID-19 vaccine. In a recent STAT conference, 3 experts, Dr. Seng Cheng, Professor Nicole Polk, and Dr. Glenn Pierce, discussed gene therapy's coming of age and what challenges might the field face in the next few years. The speakers agreed that one of the biggest hurdles for gene therapy continues to be the manufacturing. Many gene therapies are not scalable because the manufacturing process is too complex. In particular, we need new ways to produce adeno-associated viruses, or AAVs. These are small, harmless viruses that use to transport a gene therapy to its target. In addition to improving the manufacturing process, we also need to gain a better understanding of the host immune response against AAVs and why this varies from person to person. We see this immune response in most gene therapy studies, and it can affect the expression of the therapeutic genes. Ideally, we need to find a way to control this immune response. It is also pointed out that while gene therapies are expensive to make, the actual price tag for most gene therapies still far exceeds the manufacturing costs. This is understandable as companies must still recoup development costs and account for the risks that are involved in bringing any therapy to market. However, there may be room to narrow this cost gap. The team go on to discuss what state gene therapy will be in 10 years from now. Firstly, they speculate that there will be drastic improvements to AAVs. All of the first generation of these viral vectors may have been modified to reduce off-target actions, and we will hopefully understand the biology well enough to design more efficient treatments. Secondly, we will hopefully have developed better manufacturing techniques, both lowering the cost and the complexity of the manufacturing process, opening up these therapies to a much wider patient base. And finally, although it is likely that gene therapies will still primarily target monogenic diseases caused by a single gene, we may begin to see broader applications to polygenic diseases, or diseases caused by many genes. And secondly, a couple of weeks ago I had the pleasure of sitting down and chatting to Dr. Rachel Menzies. Rachel is a clinical psychologist from Australia who has published extensively on the causes of various diseases including OCD, anxiety and depression. But perhaps the topic that she has delved most deeply into is death anxiety. Rachel has also recently announced the publication of her new book, Mortals: How the Fear of Death Has Changed Society. So here's just a short clip from our talk. Do you want to just tell us a bit more about what death anxiety actually is and just explain it to people that haven't come across it before?
Sure. So death anxiety, broadly speaking, is just the fear or dread of death. So it could be fear of our own death. It could be fear of losing a loved one. It could be fear of the dying process itself, so dying in pain or kind of physical degeneration, or it could be non-existence itself. So people can really vary in their particular worries about death, but essentially when we talk about death anxiety as a term, it's referring to people's discomfort or dread or fear or feelings of purposelessness that they feel at the idea of mortality. And this is something that can be conscious, so people might consciously talk and be aware of their own fears of death.
So as you can tell, it was slightly different from our usual discussions, but it was really interesting to get Rachel's take on how death drives so many aspects of our society. So go and check out the full talk, which I'll be posting very shortly. And finally, multiple studies in the past have found that regular sauna use is associated with a reduced risk of multiple chronic diseases and could have a beneficial impact on longevity. Now, in a recent study, researchers reviewed and summarised the evidence for the health benefits of sauna use and its potential mechanisms. The authors argue that evidence in favour of the benefits of sauna use is compelling. In particular, the findings of large follow-up studies suggesting that there is a dose-dependent relationship between sauna use and reduced morbidity and mortality. That is to say, the more you frequent a sauna, the less likely you are to experience illness or death. In one such study, using a sauna 2 to 3 times a week was associated with a 27% reduction in cardiovascular disease mortality among middle-aged males. It is suggested that raising body temperature induces some of the same physiological responses as exercise, leading to these cardiovascular benefits. High temperatures also activate a family of proteins called heat shock proteins, which protect against cellular stress, and may protect against a misfolding and aggregation of proteins, which is suspected to be a driver of the aging process and of specific diseases such as Alzheimer's. One of the problems with the evidence in favour of sauna benefits is that most large studies are observational, meaning that they follow the health of participants who are using saunas of their own accord. Since the kind of people that use saunas are more likely to be wealthy and may be more likely to participate in other health activities, while those whose health is already poor may be unwilling or unable to use saunas. These confounders need to be accounted for. Randomised trials in which participants are randomly allocated sauna use or no sauna use have also suggested beneficial effects for saunas, but these studies were much smaller. However, the authors argue that evidence of strong dose-dependent relationships between the sauna use and health mean that sauna use probably does have real tangible benefits. And that is it for another episode of Longevity Weekly. So I really hope you enjoyed it and learned something new and interesting. If you did, then please leave a like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to keep you updated with everything that we're posting. I'll leave all the links in the description below for everything that I talked about here today. You can also go and check out the Gowing Life website, gowinglife.com, where you can check out all of our recent articles and longevity briefs and 101 facts about aging. So go and take a look. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you again next time. Thank you. Goodbye.